if I'm wrong, but he was one of the original visionaries of the TGH plan, which at the time I think had 50,000 beneficiaries, and thought how can I make a meaningful investment for these beneficiaries, and originally seeded some of that Ruakura vision and strategy. And of course, Chris has been involved since 2009, I think, initially, and then CE in 2015. Of course, this year, for last year's Chamber Awards, anointed CE of the Year, which is a significant event. And we'll hear from him in terms of TGH now at 78,000 shareholder beneficiaries in the tribe, and over $1 billion of assets. And of course, a new tenant just announced, which Chris can talk about soon out at Ruakura, and significant investments across retail, obviously Dawa, Senior Place, fisheries, forestry, equities, a whole bunch of stuff. So without further ado, please welcome Chris Joblin.
Kia ora koutou, ngā mihi. Kia ora koutou, ngā mihi o te wā. Can everyone hear me? Cool. Well, firstly, thanks for the opportunity to come and present this morning and share a little bit about what TGH is up to and the things that we're doing. And from my perspective, obviously I'm biased, but I think the things that we're doing are really exciting and definitely have a massive impact on our city and our region. And the impact of these things are going to be felt for a long, long time. So really this morning just wanted to share a little bit of insight into some of those things, and firstly sort of start off at a high level around how we think and what sort of drives some of our decision making. One of the things, gone too far. This slide here is a rendering of the Maersk building. So yesterday we announced that Maersk is coming to Ruakura, taking up a 45,000 square metre site. This will be their hub for New Zealand. So Maersk, largest global shipping and logistics player. So yeah, really cool to have people like Maersk, recognising not only Ruakura but our region as well. Decisions around Maersk coming to this site were made, on the other side of the world, in their corporate office in Scandinavia. So for them to recognise, some of the mega trends and things that are happening in a global supply chain sense, and to anoint that across Australasia, this is the place to start, a change in their strategy, I think is a huge acknowledgement, not only of our project, but also of our city and our region, because those things are all intrinsically interlinked, which I'll come to in a minute. So Ruakura is going really well. We probably don't share a lot in terms of what's happening, but if you drive past there, it changes every week. And there's a hell of a lot of activity. We've invested well over $100 million into that site. And it won't be long, and that will be well into the many hundreds of millions. So what Maersk are going to do here is they're looking to move further into the supply chain. So at the moment, you know them for doing shipping, but actually they're moving into materials handling, dealing with pallet loads and breaking up containers and consolidation of chilled and ambient freight, largely, well, that's primarily for the food sector. So, really exciting. And, what we're seeing is that there is huge interest in global players in coming to our region, coming to our city. They recognise the attributes that they need to make their businesses successful here. And I'll just come to some of those now. Plagiarise this from PwC, which is things around mega trends. we think about this a lot, and it drives a lot of decision making around investment and how we invest. So yeah, some key big things in terms of mega trends around broadly rapid urbanisation. We're seeing demographic and social change, climate. We're seeing big changes around global economic power and geopolitics, and obviously technology. And one that's not on here that we see a lot is food scarcity, which is increasingly becoming really prevalent. And these things sort of interconnect together. So when you think about the likes of Maersk, they are looking at the long-term futures and technological changes that are occurring in their industry, the need for them to get closer to the end user of the supply chain. So, that's driven by, some of those global economic pushes, but also urbanisation, where, there's a real focus on last mile delivery, and how you can respond to your customers' needs in a quicker and more robust fashion. They're also looking at this region as a massive food producer, which is where a lot of their customer base is going to come from. So how product, particularly food, coming in and out of the country and how that gets consolidated and distributed globally, is huge. So when you think about things like Ruakura, at its heart, Ruakura plugs into some of those mega trends. And when you talk about technology, Internet of Things, automation, that drives changes around retail. And urbanisation means you've got to change logistics. What is Ruakura? It's about connecting up logistics. So if there's one thing that you take from what I shared this morning, I'd encourage you all to think about what those megatrends are and what they mean for your business, because this is where the opportunity lies. And I'll give another example of what I'll talk about this morning. We're the largest landowner here in the CBD. And you look at some of these mega trends and they're pretty dire when you think about what they mean for a CBD environment. So CBDs is going to get tough. So, with changes around trends for employment, people working from home, some of those global economic shifts and the imbalance around wealth, climate. So, we're going to push people out of cars, as we heard earlier in the week. And what does that mean for in town? If you have to sit in the bus for an hour, you're going to work from home, which means if you're a retailer or a hospitality business in the CBD, that's going to be tough. But there's also an opportunity there as well. And that opportunity comes from, why is Hamilton here? It's because it's a nexus of transport corridors. This is why the city was here, and that's why trade comes from here. So if we can focus on what those transport corridors are, that changes the nature of the CBD, and that drives the opportunity, which will see more urbanisation, more people living in the city centre, and you will see different kinds of trade. So what we need to do is be thinking not, what's happening in a negative sense, but actually where's the opportunity? How are these trends actually going to create opportunities for us to invest into and benefit not only our individual businesses, but the communities as a whole. So, this is really, really important. And I don't think we really talk about this a lot. And when I think about those mega trends, it's all coming up Trump's Hamilton and Waikato. We are at the nexus of some big, the big trade flows within New Zealand. So if you want to access, the hinterland, it's here. So being at the centre of the Golden Triangle, it means logistics, whether we like it or not, we're going to be a major logistics hub, not only nationally, but internationally as well. when we look at things like food security and having a big part of our local economy driven around food, that's going to be absolutely positive for us. And likewise, when we think about climate change, being domiciled not next to the coast is probably quite positive. Being largely seismically benign, also positive. But also we have a whole bunch of industry and, that is actually centered around dealing with climate change. Thinking about people like LIC and what they're doing with genetics. People like ag research and genoming around grasses and things like that. So we're at the epicenter of a bunch of those changes that are actually going to flow out and create, a huge vibrant economy here. And I think there's this change that's coming, and I don't think as a city and a region, we really fully grasp what's coming. And we're pretty low-key people, so we sort of keep all the stuff to ourselves and avoid the tall poppy syndrome. But actually, we have to celebrate this stuff, and we have to talk about what makes us good, what is our competitive advantage, and how does that connect into the future? Because that's where the opportunities are going to come. And probably the other bit, that we have is a relatively joined up, strategic, vision for the region. And we have a really youthful population as well, which really sets us apart from other regions in the country. And lastly, our proximity to Auckland is probably our biggest competitive advantage. Everything grows to the sun, and Hamilton's going to be no different. But when we talk to people like Maersk and some of the other global FMCG companies that we deal with, they view Hamilton as South Auckland. So if you're talking to someone that's in Melbourne or Sydney and say, we're an hour from Auckland Airport, 50 minutes, they're like, it takes me longer to drive across Melbourne or Sydney. So they don't even, half the time, they don't even know where Hamilton is. When you start talking to these people, but when you start connecting up what it means geographically, they get it straight away. What I'll do next is really, rather than bore you talking about Ruakura, I've just got a bit of a video that shows what's been happening in a construction sense out there. And then I'll just talk to what's actually going on. The thing, when you see this video, where you see piles of sand, there's buildings going on each and every one of those bits of dirt. So just think about that. Here we go. There we go. So this is from earlier in the year. Yeah, I'll let the video do the talking. The PBT building's basically built now as you drive past. So it's a 11 hectare wetland. So yeah, it's a big site, that flyover, is less than a third of the overall site of Ruakura. And, you know, so at the moment we have PBT, which is nearly complete. We are currently building two buildings. One is Freightway, one for a Freightway subsidiary, Big Chill. The other, I can't say who that is, but that's nearly a 40,000 square metre building. So it's like one of the biggest buildings in the country. Obviously, we announced Maersk yesterday, and there's a couple others that we haven't announced as well. And the reason why we don't announce these things is we work with our partners. And yeah, it's not about us, it's actually about them and how we help them navigate through the challenges. And as you can imagine, if you're making big, you know, intergenerational decisions around where you base your business, you know, there is a lot of flow on to working through those decisions. But really at its heart, it just taps into that logistics, you know, theme of mega trends, and it's about e-commerce. And yeah, we're just going to see more and more logistics players, you know, come to this region. And why are they coming here? A couple of reasons. One, the infrastructure that's already here. So being equally distanced between the two major ports, the ability to connect import and exports together. So the example that I'd give you a few are how the supply chain works is if you're importing a container, comes in from China or wherever, comes into Auckland, and then will go to South Auckland, gets unloaded, and then gets trucked back to the port, gets de-hired because you get higher containers. That container then will get either shipped to Tauranga or come by road or rail to Hamilton, predominantly, get loaded with meat, you know, milk powder, you know, basically agricultural and technological imports, exports, then go back on a train or truck back to Tauranga. So exports go to Tauranga, imports go to Auckland. So you can figure out in there that a lot of the time that container moves around the country and you see it on a truck on the road, there's nothing in it. Because the import and the export supply chain's disparate. What Ruakura does is bring the two together, which means those containers just move around full all the time. And it means that you can have the scale to get that traffic off road and onto rail. And rail is significantly cheaper at scale to move freight. So that is about a 40% saving in the supply chain. And TGH doesn't get that money, it's our tenants and customers that get that. And hopefully it flows into the consumer as well and to lower prices. But what will also happen is it's like an arms race. So, you know, the first mover gets that advantage and they get a competitive advantage in their market, which then drives other people to make change. And that's part of the reason why we haven't announced, you know, some of the people that are coming, because they need to manage what that means from a competitor point of view for them as well. But, you know, building the logistics ecosystem, you know, Maersk is big in its own right, but they're one of a number of players and connections, and that all flows through the inland port. The inland port is an enabler. That's the anchor to all this, that brings that connectivity of the imports and the exports together. And, you know, it has a massive decarbonisation effect. So if you take 65,000 truck movements off the road a year, you know, that is a lot of carbon, you know, that comes out. But also the efficiency, you know, and being closer connected. So if you're a retailer and you have your North Island or national distribution centre in Hamilton, it's cheaper to be here than it is to be in Auckland and serve the country. And that's purely around congestion in Auckland and what I call truck kilometres served. So the number of truck kilometres that you need to reach your store footprint is less being domiciled in Hamilton than Auckland, even though Auckland is the major market and a third of the population. So these are the decisions that sophisticated logistics players are making. And again, this is why Hamilton, because we are in the heart, and it's more efficient to do logistics from here than anywhere else. So whether it's at Ruakura or elsewhere in the region, logistics is going to keep coming. And as more of the global leaders make these decisions, others will follow. So that's Ruakura. One of the other things I want to talk about is probably one that we don't talk about as much as around the CBD here. So we're largest landowner in the CBD, so pretty much everything you can see there in orange we own, including the land under the site, Centre Place, a lot of Bryce Street, and then to the southern end of the city, and including where the ACC building is going. So we look at being the largest landowner in the CBD, we have a massive vested interest to make sure that it's vibrant and is sustainable in the long term. So we're putting a lot of thinking around how we do that and connecting back into those mega trends that I raised earlier and what that means to envisage something that's different, but will be sustainable, for the long term. Because things are changing really quickly, as we all know, and our vision is to create a heart of the CBD that actually is attractive, that builds on the critical mass and actually becomes self-fulfilling and self-feeding. And we think that that's really important. We're also seeing that there is an opportunity, if we get that right, to attract people that are not currently in our region to our region. And I think this is an area where a rising tide floats all boats. So it doesn't matter whether TGH builds a building or not, or if Pizzo, you do it, or someone else does it, Leonard and Matt, that critical mass feeds on itself. And if we do that, that enables us to invest more in our social infrastructure, things like hotels and swimming pools and what have you, because you need that critical mass to be able to make the investment into those other assets. So in the CBD sense, the first place where we've started is the ACC building, which is just sort of over there. All told, it's nearly 11,000 square metres, so again, be one of the biggest buildings in town. We'll hand that over to ACC in the latter part of this year, and we'll open for trade in the new year. So you can see from the picture there, we do things a little bit differently. As an owner, because we're going to own buildings forever, well, that's the intention anyway. We want things to look good through their whole life, and also we are looking at ways that we can manage that whole of life impact in these assets. So whether that is recycling of water and grey water, thinking about more sophisticated building services to minimise your carbon footprint and energy and things like that. As an intergenerational investor, it gives you the freedom to do those things, and to think a little bit differently around what you put into a building. And our aspiration is, if you drive around the CBD and you look at a building, it's ours by the quality, by the design, and by the input that goes into it. So, these buildings are a manifestation of more metaphysical, aspirations of our iwi, and that's really important. So ACC, we bring in about 650 staff into this building. and it consolidates a bunch of different buildings. ACC is about 8,500 square metres, and there's a bit of retail and, you know, creation, things like that go into the site. So this is the first thing that we've done in the CBD. But also, you know, in that thinking, we're thinking about the heart, which is really centre place, you know, and in here, think between Garden Place and effectively Bryce Street really is the critical piece in the CBD. And going back to those mega trends, you think about what's happening around climate change and change to transport policies, etc. If you're going to be an office worker in the CBD, you're going to be having to catch public transport, which means then you're going to have to go from the transport node to your office. So global studies say 400 metres is about it. At a push, you might get 800 metres. So you think about where our CBD is going to crunch down into, it is pretty much 400 metres from the transport hub. And we need to think about how we create an integrated transport hub, you know, both, you know, multimodal road and rail. And again, as we go, having fast connection to Auckland. So, you know, there are options to bring in Pandalino trains, which would see you from train station here, if it opened to Britomart under an hour. You know, that's truly transformational for us as a city. So we're working with our partners, Kiwi Property, around what we do with the site, and we've been doing a lot of work around master planning, and how I'd describe the aspiration is probably more Britomart than what you see here currently, and more mixed use, so less retail, more office, you know, inner city living and transport. But the mega trends, you know, means that if you don't have transport in the centre of the CBD is going to die. So that is the piece, that is the critical piece that makes it all work, and it needs to integrate. And if you're thinking about where you domicile your business, you know, I wouldn't be, you know, investing in office that's not more than 400 metres from the railway station or the bus depot, because you won't get staff. So, you know, these are the things that, you know, are quite critical, and, yeah, so we think about that a lot around how we, you know, invest capital and where we invest capital. But it's hard if the heart of the CBD is strong. Going back to what else we own in the wider CBD, that has a halo effect to all those other properties. And likewise, a lot of the properties that you all own as well. So CBD is a massive focus for us at the moment, and that will see a significant investment over, you know, a decade or more into rethinking and revitalising what is here. This is sort of a sneak peek of, you know, the kinds of things that we're thinking about. So if you're sitting on, you know, Victoria Street, looking into what is the main entrance way of Centre Place now, you know, office tower on the left, and what is that empty lot? But on the right there, mixed use, you know, inner city living, you know, scale apartments. So, you know, very, very different, you know, as a gateway to our centre of our city. So as we have more that we can share there, we will. But I guess the point that I'll just leave you is, you know, it is a massive focus for us. Ruakura is one. The other is in a property sense, and the other is the centre of town here. You know, where we believe there needs to be a massive investment. We know that others are investing in the CBD as well, and making sure that we have a joint vision and actually work together to create something that is truly exceptional is really important. Hotels is one that we get asked about a lot. We know it's a sort of a hot topic in the city. You know, we have a view around hotels that yes, there's one needed, but maybe not quite now. That building on the right is Te Ariki Nui, which is the former hotel in Auckland Airport. That's not an artist's rendition, that's an actual photo of the building. So you can see that's, again, something very special. 311 room hotel, that'll be the best hotel in the country. At the gateway, it's a concave tri-star building, so very, very unique. Cloak that sits underneath, so, you know, you can see the copper facade that sits underneath the building there as well. So a lot of work has gone into how that building has been designed, being the gateway to our country. So that will, with COVID, we delayed building the rooms out because we needed a hotel, you know, 12 months ago, 24 months ago. But what we're seeing is that international, you know, travel is globally is accelerating a lot quicker than people thought. The challenge for us locally is to make sure that we open up quick enough so that the carriers actually come here. And that's a problem, but hopefully that's a problem that we'll overcome. The other thing that we're doing with our hotels locally is just spending $7.5 million to upgrade the IDIS. So it's just a refresh of the rooms, so, you know, new carpet, new bathrooms, you know, things like that. So in a 120 room hotel, to paint it and do some minor work costs you $7.5 million. It gives you an understanding of what it costs to actually build a new hotel. So an economic new hotel in Hamilton is 160 to 200 rooms, and pre-COVID would have cost you $500,000 to $550,000 a room. I'd hate to think what it would cost today, but you're talking $100 million plus dollars for a city that has occupancy around 70% normal, mid 70s. Today it's well below 30. So, you know, really as a city we need occupancy well into the 80s to make another hotel economic. Otherwise all that's going to happen is existing capacity is going to be taken out, so there'll be no new capacity, it's just different. But that said, we will need a new hotel, and one of the things that we openly share is a critical piece to actually generate that hotel investment is tourism attraction. We need something in the city that actually brings punters in here. So rather than being just government and corporate, we actually need people to come here and stay, you know, from a tourism point of view. And if we can do that, so if we had the equivalent of a Waitomo or such like in the city centre, you know, that would bring in 400,000 or 500,000 people a year, which means you don't need one hotel, you need probably 3. That then means that you have the capacity to attract the big events at Claudelands. So, you know, again, collectively, we have to think about those things because they're not disparate, they are all interlinked. And how we plan for that, that investment collectively, that creates vibrancy, I think is really important. And we don't have to do that individually, but we do need to do it collectively. So yeah, hotel capacity, you know, we're probably not going to add anything in the short term in the city, just because our view is that it'd be uneconomic. But we do believe that it will be needed, you know, probably in the next, you know, 5 to 10 years. To sort of summarise some of the things that I've talked about today. Everything's coming up trumps, Hamilton. It really is. Yeah, we couldn't have planned this better if we wanted to. Yeah, so we're in the sweet spot that's coming whether we like it or not. And we need to embrace for that and make the most of this opportunity, because it is massive. It really is massive, and it is going to dramatically change our city and our region for the positive in terms of economic activity and opportunity. The things that I see and touch, I think Hamilton will be the #2 city in the country behind Auckland, just because of those mega trends. It's going to see our population continue to increase and industry and everything else. So we have to embrace that because it's coming. And I know Hamilton City, that probably might cause a few grey hairs planning for that, but it's coming. Whether we like it or not, it is coming. So we have to get on that bandwagon, that train, and embrace it and really capture the opportunity that's coming. Because I think, and everything that I see, is that we're in a sweet spot and we have to take advantage of that sweet spot. And we might not recognise it collectively as a business community or a city or a region yet, but people like Merce do. This is why they're investing big money in being here. So this is our moment. I encourage you all to take it. So that's my presentation. Hopefully that has given a few insights. But happy to take any questions or partai. Any other areas of interest? It doesn't have to be about what I've talked about this morning.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. It's fascinating to get an insight under the hood. There's a lot happening at a lot of levels. We'll open up to questions. We've got about 10 minutes, so if anyone wants to fire away.
So much talk about using the river, the Awa, for the transport.
Yeah.
I saw something a while ago about the lakes using that, get a transport corridor using the river and brings landings along to get CBD that way.
Yeah.
Something that's considered by anyone at the moment?
It's not being considered by us. We have seen the proposals. The challenge is how do you get 20 to 30,000 people from the northeast of the city and move them around? A boat on the river is not going to do it. So that's the kind of challenge that we have to plan for. That urbanisation and hypermobility. We have to plan our transport networks and mode options. The river is one, but there's a whole lot of others that need to be connected together, and there's more experts in the room than me on that, but certainly that would be my view.
There was actually a trial that the regional council funded for the River Explorer. Unfortunately, so it got sunk by COVID. So there's a discussion of the parties in the next few days just about where their heads. But I think, Chris, you've hit the nail on the head. It's just that you don't get the numbers. It's probably more around your recreation and the tourism side of it. Going to the gardens and going up north and doing an interpretive sort of tour or something like that, tying in with the hotels. The destination Hamilton type prospect. Yeah,
but if we're a bigger city, if we're 500,000 people, it means that we can invest in quite different transport options. So, we need to be thinking about that growth and what are the different options and modes that will enable, because, what are we now, 170,000 people and 350 in the region? That's not sufficient scale to invest in the types of things that we actually really need. So you need to actually have the scale and the two things need to come together at some point in time. There's a question at the back.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned climate change in a few instances earlier, but I'm curious in terms of your wider corporate strategy, how you're looking at sustainability, including climate change amongst some of the other investments and developments and stuff that you're making. Could you maybe give us an overview? Yeah,
we look at sustainability, and it's multidimensional. It's not just climate. It is really important to us and is a key part of our strategy and corporate philosophy. but in a climate sense, what we are looking to do is to make sure that we shrink our footprint, that when we build stuff, that actually we're looking at ways to, minimize, carbon, and where we can sequester it. We invest in forests, our farms, we do a lot of, riparian planting and, things like that. Ruakura, there'll be 6 million trees planted. So those are just different things, the small things, but they all add up. Ruakura at its heart, is a key plank to the decarbonisation of the transport industry in the upper North Island and North Island. So I think what we have to be doing is looking at these things, in a multi-dimensional sense, and how they all impact together. We also need to think about what some of the changes that we make, or changes that we make from a climate point of view, that they're not impacting social cohesion and creating, more gaps, from a societal point of view as well. So there's lots to it, but it's definitely a major focus for us. And probably the other point is we just won't invest in assets that don't fit that philosophy.
Tēnā tātou whewesti te ataku ingoa. Amihi roi kia koe, Chris, mō whakōrero I tēnei ata. Kia koe, Hoki Ryan, mō te mahi whakarite, organising. O tira, kia koutou katoa. Ngā kaiarahi o Hamilton. So, big mihi to all you leaders, innovators, and entrepreneurs within the room. Lovely to meet you all. Just thought I'd stand up and mihi to you as well. You really appreciated the kōrero, took heat from it. It was lovely to hear and look under the hood in terms of the either nuts and bolts and how the machinations of an iwi-led, an aspiration of an iwi-led Hamilton is evolving. You touched on tourism, and I stand here to represent Māori kaupapa, Te Ahurei Māori tourism, family-led kaupapa, and strangely, well, funnily enough, our kaupapa is actually, we do Māori art walking tours of the CBD itself.
Yep.
So I thought I'd, and what we actually cover is we visit 9 different pieces of art and tell the stories and all the traditional narratives that are stored within the art. I was fortunate enough to sit down with all the artists and as I was developing the tour, and they were very humble and very forward in sharing I guess what the art represents. A brief example of that is you touched on the Pullman Hotel, Te Tainui, the ingoa Māori, Te Tainui. So Te Tainui, I'm not going to assume anything, so what people know and don't know, but Te Tainui means the ariki of arikis, so the chief of chiefs, ariki, chief, nui, big, great, so the chief of chiefs. Our late queen, Te Arakinui Te Atarangi Kahu, mihi o te kia aia, very, very beloved, very graceful, very elegant, very kind, very generous lady, who's dear to my heart and the hearts of our people. So to tie that back to our Māori art walking tour, Te Arakinui Te Atarangi Kahu, when you leave today and you head back towards Te Kōpū Mānia Marae, you'll see a po, and on there's actually an outstretched fork, and that represents Te Arakinui Te Atarangi Kahu. Te Atarangi Kahu meaning the hawk of dawn. So te ata meaning the morning, te rangi, rangi is the sky, kahu is the hawk, so the hawk of dawn. In terms of a tohu or a logo or symbol, her symbol was a outstretched hawk with a rising sun behind it. So, in conclusion, I just wanted again to, me to you, Chris, and for everyone coming today, and I'd love to sit down and maybe chat with you sometime. So going to bring flies. In the same applies to all of you. Personally, yes, this is a business, but I always refer to it as a kaupapa because for me, it's a purpose. Yes. Thank you. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
I think that's, sorry, if I can just respond to that a little bit. This is where it's really important. We are all interconnected. So you bring your guests, your manawhiri into our city. They spend money here. They buy lunch. They do stuff in town. They might stay in the hotel. We all benefit from that, whether we know it or not. And that's where we need to understand how interconnected things are, and actually work together, because it flows out to everyone. And I think that's really important. And how we work together and help each other, I think, to me personally, I think is really important for us as a city and as a region. But there's a couple other questions at this time. I'm happy to.
Just go two more and then we'll formally close and then people can catch up. Alan.
Yeah, thanks for that. It was very enlightening. I worked in the recruitment and labour hire industry. Would be very interested to hear your vision for where the labour force is going to come from, bearing in mind accommodation restrictions and transport restrictions. With a lot of people don't have the ability to get around, and also if you've got plans to upskill local labour force for the volume of business you're going to be bringing into Great Waikato.
Yeah, I'll answer that in sort of two parts. Firstly, labour is connected to exactly those issues that you talked about. So when you think about Ruakura, what I haven't talked about this morning is we have an aspiration to build 4,500 houses out there as well. So that means that the people that work there hopefully can have an affordable house and can walk to work. So that you have to start think about how those things, again, repeat theme, how they connect together, because you can't look at it in isolation. So we working with Hamilton City, to get a planning change that would enable those 4,500 houses to be built, because we could put industrial buildings in there, but actually recognise the best thing for the city, taking that that approach, is actually to change that zoning and to put it into houses, and that will be medium to high density housing, which is lower cost, more affordable. In terms of how we attract people into the city, making sure that we have a higher wage economy is important. We have a young population base. All we've got to do is keep them here. Really, is the biggest challenge. And one of the things that we also do, which links into the sustainability question earlier, is collectively as a group, Waikato-Tainui has a big focus on social procurement as well. And for anyone that's interested, if you go to the Waikato-Tainui website and you can look up the details, how to register, etc. So we're looking at, again, how do you give people the opportunity to participate? So, for example, the ACC building here, there are multiple contractors that have gained work on that site and at it Ruakura through social procurement. and working with those vendors collectively. So it's not just TGH, it's the tribe as a whole that runs this kaupapa. You know, that creates opportunities for people that might not otherwise get it and gives them the ability to grow. And these are local businesses, you know, typically. So, you know, it's multifaceted. So we know that we have to grow and invest in the people that we work with to enable them to grow, and whether that's tribally owned businesses or the wider community. And we know that what we want is to work with local businesses wherever possible that creates, you know, that community and, you know, the ability to grow. And where that doesn't exist locally and we have the opportunity to help someone bring that capability or capacity locally, you know, we're prepared to work with people to enable that to happen. Can't do it always, you know, because, you know, as most of you know, things like health and safety and you know, other legislative requirements are really important. So we will not take risk around those things. But aside from that, we are happy to facilitate and work with local contractors. So, you know, Hawkins is doing this job here at ACC. You know, CNR Schick are doing all the current work at Ruakura. Calder Stewart have set up a team locally to build PBT in another building. You know, the Cambridge Police Station, which is another one that I haven't talked about this morning, is all being done by local contractors. So, yeah, we're part of this community, and it's really important that, again, we share that out as much as possible.
Jason, final question.
Yeah, just the last question. Yeah, great talk, thanks. What does Ranga area, the redevelopment there, mean for the tribe? That's just been created up there.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, I'm probably not the right person to really talk to what that means, but it is massive, because this is, you know, that was the starting point, you know, of confiscation. So that's where, you know, that was the first big battle in the Waikato Wars, and that's where confiscation stemmed from, and ultimately the redress, you know, of which TGH, you know, is you know, responsible for managing part of that. But I think, yeah, for a historical context, I couldn't do that conversation justice, because the meaning for that is really massive. I just wouldn't do that justice.
Don, I was going to say a few final words.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming today. One of the key things, the underpinnings of the chamber is to connect, to grow and to represent our members, but overriding all of that is to inspire our members to go from good to great. And we have to thank Ryan very much for creating the Inspire series, and certainly to Chris, thank you very much. That was an inspirational talk and an aspirational one. So Chris, thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you.
Are you around for a little bit?
Yeah.
Feel free to catch up with Chris if you've got time to stay. We're going to formally close the meeting. Next month, we've got Jason Gunn. He's going to be speaking to us. He's developed a business on the art of public speaking called Easily Said, and he's just so brilliant to watch. And he'll be zooming in, so we're just working out whether we'll do a live big Zoom to an interactive audience, or whether it'll be online. We'll work through, but that's locked and loaded for the first Wednesday of next month. But otherwise, thanks again for coming and turning up, and have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers, Chris.
Oh,